Welcome into the Backroads Bill Podcast. I'm Ben, and today we are talking mining, which is a topic that has come up a number of times on this podcast. It's such an important part of what we talk about on the Backroads Bill Podcast, which it's about the land, it's about environment, and obviously mining is very much attached to that, both from the environmental standpoint, in terms of Indigenous relations, and of course actually taking minerals and other resources from the earth itself. So a lot of ties there, which is why we tend to talk mining quite a bit on this podcast. But today we're taking a little bit of a different look at it. Our guest today, Morgan Murphy, is someone who goes around and engages with the youth, engages with the younger people to do these amazing mining tours all across Ontario. In fact, she just came back from one right before we recorded this episode. And again, she was all over the place, all the way up, and she'll talk about her tour in this episode, but going all the way up north past Timmins and down to Sudbury and all the way back down. Of course, she lives down south in Toronto, so it really was a great way to get people out into the actual on-site places, which is absolutely fantastic. And we're going to dive in a little bit to the recruitment part, into why mining is such an interesting place, and also women in mining as well. With it being such a predominantly male field, especially traditionally, to see the amount of women who are working and making a name for themselves in this field is absolutely fantastic. And the impact that they've had and continue to have in mining is so good. And just like Morgan, who's doing that as well on her side. So all of that coming up. But first, a word from today's sponsor, Source for Sports, North Bay. Spring is here, and that means one thing. Baseball is back. At Source for Sports North Bay, we're proud to be part of every pitch, every catch, and every moment that brings our community together on the diamond. Whether it's outfitting little leaguers for their very first game, helping local teams suit up for the season, or simply sharing the love of the sport, we're here for it. We're more than just a sports store. We're neighbors, coaches, teammates, and fans. And we're proud to support the leagues, schools, and families who make North Bay's baseball scene so special. Wherever your sports journey takes you, make sure you visit Source for Sports North Bay at 1321 Fisher Street so we can help you along your way. So today we are pleased to have on the program Morgan Murphy. Nice, easy name to say. Sometimes we get some harder names that I have to try to pronounce.
You did that very well, Ben.
Morgan, you have a number of different titles that we were kind of going through before we started. But I guess the best way to describe you is an industry advocate, and you're currently doing work with the Ontario Mining Association. So first of all, welcome to the podcast, and maybe give us a little super quick note about kind of what you do and what an industry advocate is.
Thank you so much, Ben and Bill, for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity, and I want to say thank you to the listeners who are taking time out of a busy, chaotic world to listen to a conversation about mining, particularly in Northern Ontario. That is awesome. So my name is Morgan Murphy, and I work for a consulting firm called the Clue Group, where we specialize in reputation management, and I like to call it more storytelling. I get the opportunity to really tell incredible stories that are not heard as widely and as often. And over the past decade, working in this sector, the mining sector, I've really become passionate about the opportunities and sometimes the stories that are a little misunderstood in this sector. And I'm really passionate about sharing those stories with the youth in Ontario as the next generation. Hugely, hugely important. You know, Ben, we can't go a day without listening to the news about hearing about the mining industry, critical minerals. For obvious reasons, don't need to name names, why some of those topics are really big in the news right now. And I think we have an opportunity as this industry to really tell our story differently. So super passionate about that and appreciate the opportunity to be here with you today.
One of the reasons Morgan's on the Backroads Bill podcast, Ben, is that she is passionate and she tells incredible stories. But when on the backroads of Northern Ontario, you're eventually going to come across a mine. whether it's a shaft mine or an open pit mine. And you can talk about the 5 cities in Northern Ontario or the Northern Ontario economy or the Ontario economy in general. And mining, modern mining, is the backbone and front and center, and Morgan's already mentioned precious minerals and the like. And so again, I thought from a different perspective, because people don't understand modern mining. I mean, seeing is believing. And when I first met Morgan and found out what she was doing with the Ontario Mining Association, it made abundant sense to have her on the Backroads Bill podcast and talk about this, because people need to know. And I think that's a takeaway after this podcast, is to find out more about modern mining. And importantly, we're going to get right into it, that there are jobs in the mining sector, particularly for youth, more than 100 different occupations, and let's get at it. And so actually, Morgan, you may have been new to modern mining a few years back, but tell us, what is some of your takeaways to date that you've discovered in your presentations, in your productions?
It's a great question, Bill, and maybe I'll start even before my takeaways, because I grew up in Toronto, and I went to a prestigious girls' school here in Toronto. I do not think the word mining was mentioned once, and I went on to study political science and global development at Queen's University. Thought I might go save the world, and here we are. I'm telling stories and really helping to amplify this critical industry that really is the backbone of our economy. And I think that's something I didn't understand as someone in my early 20s. I just never thought about it. I just never thought about where our things come from. Today I talk to youth and I say, where does this thing come from? Your cell phone, your most coveted, prized possession. And you know what they tell me? They tell me Apple and China. And I find it, you know, surprising. Um, the answer is the earth. And I think that's such an issue that we go about our daily lives and we don't think about this critical industry. So I think coming out of the last number of years, that's my biggest takeaway has been a bit living under a rock as a youth and as someone wanting to make a difference, and really realizing that we have so much opportunity here at home to make that difference. And we just really need to tell our stories a little bit differently. And so I think that is essential to communicating with this next generation and the public at large. We don't think about getting in a car and where it's coming from, turning on a light switch, how that's made, everyday items that we use. I mean, the modern world literally is built on our resources from mine to market. There's an entire supply chain that depends on Canadian natural resources that we should be really proud about. And I think that's something that, I find really important and valuable into the work that I do.
Well, the saying is, in full disclosure, because the Canadian Ecology Centre is a big proponent of modern mining tours, and we take educators and students and others, people from NGOs, because we often say, Ben, if it's not mined, it's grown, and if it's not grown, it's mined, and that's what Morgan just described. And often, if again over 16 years or so, this is all about seeing is believing. And I want Morgan to talk about these 4 pillars that she's come across in modern mining. It's the environment, safety, technology, and occupations. And I think that's a good segue into some of your next comments.
Absolutely. I think what's absolutely incredible about being able to get onto a mine is you really, seeing is believing, Bill, you really get to see and experience all facets of the industry. There's not just miners on site. There are electricians, mechanic, haul truck drivers, heavy duty equipment operators. There are chefs, there are nurses. There are so many vocations of the people that make modern mining happen. There's entire environmental departments. Our environmental records here in Canada are some of the best in the world, if not the best. And another area, and stories that we should be proud telling. It's really, really incredible to see the work on site by these environmental teams. And from a safety perspective, oh my goodness, Just the amount of safety, it is so ingrained in the culture when you step off of the bus and onto these mine sites. And I've now been to a number of them. I've had the privilege of going underground at Nickel Rim, Glencore mine in Sudbury, underground at Macassa Gold Mine, Agnico Eagle Mine in Kirkland Lake, Ontario. Um, Detour, one of Canada's largest gold open pit mines, Agnico Eagle, north of Cochrane, Ontario. Just recently, I was underground, a couple CN towers deep, I might add. Coleman Mine, a valley mine just north of Sudbury, which was absolutely incredible. And I've also had the privilege of seeing the smelter and the Copper Cliff Nickel Refinery at Valley. And all of them, this entire industry, from a safety perspective, from an environmental perspective, I mean, it's just mind blowing when you really think about it and you get to experience it. But I appreciate that it's hard for the average Canadian who doesn't have these opportunities to understand what that's like. You can read stats, in an economic report that talk about safety standards and environmental standards, and all of that is super important. But there's nothing like speaking to someone, particularly a youth, on site at a mine who looks at you and tells you, I feel safe while I'm doing my job. I feel like I am adding value and protecting our planet while we're extracting an essential resource for modern mining. I love the work that I do. And that's the privilege of being able to work in this industry. There's so many stories like that.
Yeah, and it's interesting because we've had I've had the privilege of working with a lot of people in mining, meeting a lot of like big wigs in mining. We recently did a mental health video shoot with Cementation. They had literally the CEO of the whole company, and it's fascinating because none of them have big egos. They're not big CEO people. They're very down to earth people, and that's because a lot of them, like if you talk to a lot of them, they started at the bottom. They didn't come in from a CEO position. A lot of them came from a bottom position and worked their way up. I mean, even on this program, like we've talked to Roy Slack, who is, again, one of those guys who started as an engineer. I believe it was an engineer, and then worked his way to end up like running the company and being on the board, and he's still on the board. So I think that's a big thing when you talk about youth, the ability to be able to build up. Because one of the things that's fascinating about Northern Ontario was I guess it was the year before, we went out to Kananaskis. We did some mental health stuff because that's a huge thing, a huge push right now in the industry with obviously with some of the long hours and being on the road and stuff. Mental health is a huge push right now in the mining industry, as you probably know, Morgan. But anyways, a lot of the people you met, we went out to Calgary area in Kananaskis, and they were all from basically Northern Ontario because that's where a lot of this stuff is happening. And I guess my very long-winded question is, when you're talking to youth, and is the ability of them to be able to start at the bottom, work their way up into something bigger with very little, I would say, not experience, but education, and being able to do it kind of in the field, is that something that is attractive to a lot of young people?
It's a great question, Bill. And I think a lot of that has changed. And I think, I think about coming out of high school into university myself 15 years ago. The pressure was on, get a university degree, right? Go towards an academic degree. I think we shot ourselves in the foot by really not prioritizing the skilled trades and other vocational offerings. And we're seeing that now. We have such a huge skilled labor shortage across so many industries, but particularly in mining. And when I talk to youth now and tell them, they can graduate high school, they can get an apprenticeship, they can take an intro course at a local college to get a electrical license or mechanical license, and they could be making 40% more than their peers if they were to take that skilled trade into the mining industry. I mean, their minds are just blown. And then on top of that, you talk to them about the rotational work. Again, I came from, a societal expectation that, jobs were Monday to Friday, 9 to 5 and nothing else. And talking to youth today who work at some of these mines in their 20s, they do 7 days on, 7 days off, 14 days on, 14 days off. That means they're working 6 months of the year, and then they have 6 months to do whatever else they want. And many of them tell me that they're traveling to Whistler, to Mexico. They're working on their own projects at home, taking care of their families, brushing up on other skills. I mean, that's pretty incredible to make a great income and also work half of the year. And so I think those conversations have really opened my mind to the diversity of jobs and opportunities that are out there. And when I share that with other youth, same thing. They really didn't realize or think about this industry as a place for opportunity. But I'm hopeful that that's changing. And with a lot of young people today, very, very attuned to um, the economic state of the world, the dinner table conversations is life is expensive. And so the focus is on how do I get a really good paying job while also, very important to Gen Z, having purpose in your life and having an opportunity to live life well. And I think it is changing a little bit, and I'm really hopeful for this next generation who see the opportunity in diversified work, such as the mining industry, and also the opportunity to get paid to learn. I mean, how cool is that? To be able to get a degree while you're working, get paid to do another co-op or an apprenticeship while you're learning. Tons of opportunities that the mining industry is passionate about investing in.
Yeah, no, I just watched, your most recent production from the Detour Lake Agnico Eagle mine, and funny you just mentioned about there's a couple clips there about purpose, and in the interview, people said about I'm trying to make a difference environmentally, because at the Canadian College Centre we have this MADE, MADE, make a difference environmentally, and at the end of our lifetimes I hope we can all say that. So Ben, the real challenge is that we've got to, as Morgan started out by saying early in this interview, is that the mining sector has to do a better job in recruiting young people. So one of our purposes, not only at the Ontario Mining Association sponsors the mining tours at the Canadian Ecology Centre, is to try to attract educators, teachers to go on these tours, because over the lifetime of a teacher, you can affect literally hundreds of students. But if you don't know anything about modern mining, I mean, one of the outcomes we want to see on some of these tours is, I didn't know that. And as soon as we hear that, because now they do know, because there's that perception of modern mining, they still think it's old school mining. It's just not so. And so what Morgan is really doing, and please tell us now about some of the products that you've been working on, because I think this is so important as far as being an advocate and an educator yourself with regards to these products, what we have to do with them, and how we get to those audiences, especially the young people.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'll start by saying this. It's about time we stop talking about the problem and start doing something about it. And Bill, you've been an advocate for that for many, many years. So my hats are off to you. But bringing folks to site, creating videos and visual mediums to tell these stories beyond the folks who can get to site is super important. I mean, we know everybody lives chronically online. We have to create stories and messages that are going to resonate with the audience. We can't expect them to come to us. We have to go to them. And that means social media, that means TikTok, that means YouTube, that means advertising in unique forums like gaming advertising. And that means more mining companies opening up to the invitation to say, come on to site. Obviously, these are operating mine sites, and that can't happen all the time. But the more people we bring on site, the more they are able to share those experiences and become ambassadors themselves. And so over the past number of years, in partnership with the OMA and Mining Matters of the Canadian Ecology Centre, we've conducted these teacher tours and produced content from those stories to be able to share to a wider audiences. We've created resources for those teachers to take back to their students, career pathways, compensation pathways, tips for interviews, tips for resumes. How can we bridge the gap between an industry that desperately needs young blood and new people for the next generation, and those teachers who are looking to help those students progress in their careers? And so I think we're starting to do a lot of that work. And I just want to say thank you to the Ontario government, who has been a huge supporter in the This Is Mine Life campaign, the one with the Ontario Mining Association, to be able to share these stories through different distribution channels, meeting youth where they are. That's at places like career fairs, skilled trade fairs, winter games that was held last year in Thunder Bay. Our This Is Mining award-winning podcast that reaches a new audience. Partnerships with educator influencers like Teachers on Call. Really getting out into the community and bringing that information to the teachers. So hugely thankful for that opportunity. And you see it in the teachers when they come back and they share their experiences. There's one teacher that comes to mind who's come on a number of tours. Bill, you'll know exactly who I'm thinking about. And this individual firmly believes that he's had over 20 youth decide to go into a career in mining because of the teaching and the learning that he's had from these types of experiences, bringing that back to the classroom and making it accessible. But at the end of the day, it really is being more open-minded to the opportunities that this sector has, and recognizing that this sector is essential to our economy. I'm sorry. I've got a couple dogs in the background. I hope we can edit that out. I'm sorry.
Probably not, but it's fine. It adds to the ambiance.
Yeah, it adds to everything.
I'm sorry. This is working from home, everybody. So yeah, hugely important to be able to connect with these teachers. And in addition, connect with students. We just did a tour in partnership with CIM Toronto branch where we took 11 engineering and earth sciences students on a tour across Northern Ontario with stops at Redpath to see the mobile maintenance shop and the raise boring, and also to the NORCAT training facility where they got to go underground for the first time and suit up in their PPE and their CoverGals PPE, female-friendly personal protective equipment. And then also get to stop by Laurentian and, hear a fascinating talk with Dr. Nadia Mikacek on biomining and the importance of tailings and how we can extract value and also clean up the earth with biomining and all that great work that she's doing over there at Laurentian. We went to Vale's Coleman mine underground, which was absolutely incredible to get 4 kilometers underground with these students who were just fascinated by what they saw, to talk to the geologists there. And then we headed up to Côté Gold, which is an incredibly innovative and advanced operation. It is absolutely wild to see some of these autonomous trucks with no one in the cabs. Literally, no one is at the driver's seat. The driver is in an air-conditioned control room, basically looking like they're playing video games, managing 21 trucks at a time. Equally as cool as the person next to him who is developing the pathways because the mine's changing all the time. So the autonomous technology is absolutely insane to see, and you really don't get a grasp for it until you're standing next to some of those massive, massive trucks. So an incredible trip all around, and hope to be able to take more students and more educators on these opportunities.
Well, we're going to take a quick break from mining to talk a little bit about a very important part of our community. Now, if you're in North Bay, mining is a huge part of our community. Over 60, I believe it is, companies that are in the mining sector just out of here as well. But there is another thing that is so crucial to our community and also to every community, really, and that is our local hospital. And here at ECHO, we are very proud to have partnered with the North Bay Regional Health Centre Foundation, who's in charge of raising money and making sure that the hospital has the funding they need for the research, for new equipment and all of that stuff as well. And again, it helps save lives, and everybody in some way has been affected, whether for positive or negative, have been affected by some sort of medical condition or have had to use the hospital in some way. So it's something that's near and dear to most people, pretty much everybody's heart. And we actually just recently had a really cool story on To North Bay with Love. It came out, if you're watching this on the day this podcast released, it was actually yesterday's episode, June 17th episode. But we actually had Tammy Morrison, who is the CEO and the head honcho there. She came in alongside the West Ferris Trojans. We had Mark Robertson and Mallory, who's a grade 9 student, to talk about the Trojans Parade for Cancer, which, of course, is so I went to Ferris. I participated in it. And it's been fantastic, and it's a great listen if you want to learn more about the community impact, because they raised over $51,000 just going door to door. No big donations, no big corporate funding there. $51,000 from just boots on the ground campaigning, which was just awesome. And again, it shows how important this community is to raising that kind of money to get, again, different equipment that helps with not just cancer, but everything across the range of medical help, which is so important. And one of the cool things is I know we see big numbers. You see hundreds of thousands of dollars or tens of thousands of dollars, but you don't need to donate that kind of money to make an impact at the hospital, which is actually really neat. So they have this really cool program. It's called the I Give Monthly Club. Even just a few dollars a month, $20, whatever it is you can afford a month, that adds up over time, over months and years, to a really big donation that's really impactful. So even though it doesn't feel like you're giving anything, the fact that you're able to help the hospital out, and then when you start adding more and more and more people, all of a sudden that it starts to turn into a huge number. So if you want to learn more about the I Give Monthly Club, you can head to their website, nbrhcfoundation.ca. And thank you to the hospital for all the work you do in our community and all the stuff that you do on a daily basis and a yearly basis, and also for sponsoring the Echo Community Podcast Network.
Hey, North Bay, it's time to celebrate. The city is turning 100, and Homewood Suites by Hilton North Bay invites you to the party. Be at home in our spacious suites, each featuring a kitchen. Yeah, a real kitchen. Also, enjoy our comfy living spaces and brand new fitness gear so you can keep feeling great while staying on budget. Planning a big bash or business event? We've got the perfect meeting spaces right here on site. Plus, with our partnerships at the Grand and Stock Transportation, your guests and delegates are in great hands. Want to know the best part? We're right beside the beautiful Cape Paceway, steps to North Bay's lively waterfront, and moments from downtown's shopping, dining, and entertainment. Celebrate the Centennial with us all year long with an exclusive discount. Just use the code CENTENNIAL when booking your stay. Be at home with Homewood Suites by Hilton North Bay. Join the party today at 495 Oak Street West or call us at 705-495-3000.
Everyone should go on a mine tour. I always say that, but of course, to access a mine, it's very difficult because they're uber safety conscious everywhere you go, and so that's why you do what you do with regards to these video products and a host of other products as well. Two more things I think need to talk about. One is that the environmental part, Ben. Again, people think that no one in mining gets up every morning to rape and pillage the earth. It just doesn't happen. We can stay home and shut our doors and our car doors but mines are highly regulated, and at Canada and Australia in particular are world leaders in the standards that they do their business on a day-to-day basis, and that also includes the indirect mining businesses. In North Bay alone, we have more than 60. In Sudbury, I think it's like 200, and everywhere you go. So if you're thinking about career possibilities in the trades and other occupations, mining is. And again, actually, this conversation, I'm just thinking, like, why doesn't anyone know about this? It just behooves me even to think about that, Morgan. But maybe a comment about the environmental part that you witnessed, because again, this is one of your new takeaways. I think, having come from Save the Earth, but now you're actually making a difference with what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's incredible to meet with some of these youth who are really passionate about working in the environment, and they've chosen to take their career into the mining industry because they tell me that's where they're going to have the biggest difference. So it's really incredible and inspiring to see these people make that decision, and everything from species monitoring to water quality testing. Managing all of the factors that go into progressive rehabilitation and reclamation. This is not something that's an afterthought. It is part of the entire mine planning that happens at the very, very beginning of this entire process. And that's just one of the types of jobs that could be found, in the mining industry that Bill alluded to. There's Right now, according to the Ontario Mining Association, there's 22,000 people employed in the mining industry in Ontario, with an additional 130,000 with jobs in the service and supplies directly supporting the mining industry. And you want to know what that average salary is, Bill? $150,000,
Yeah,
right? Like
exactly.
that's
For working 6 months, 6 months of the year, Ben. I don't know why we're sitting here at the table. We could be doing other things in other places, but it is a lifestyle choice. And in these video clips that Morgan presents, people talk about that. They talk about their lives and their lifestyle. And again, it's as you said earlier. We were ingrained in our brains. It's our work is 9 to 5, and it just doesn't have to be that way. There's all kinds of variability. The other segue I want to talk about is Indigenous relations, because there's not a mine, certainly not in Canada, Northern Ontario, that there is not an economic impact agreement with a local First Nation or First Nations, and we may get around to talk about the Ring of Fire, and we've had guests on before talking about the Ring of Fire, but I think mines go out of their way in these relationships that they build to hire from local communities and use their services. And maybe, Morgan, one of your takeaways again from what you've experienced at the various mines you've gone to.
Absolutely. 12% Indigenous representation in the mining industry, which is significantly higher than the province's 3% for overall workforce. I mean, that's just staggering. And that's, many of them live in the North. They call the North home. So I had the privilege of working with the head chef at Musselwhite Mine, Marcel Boucher. He's been there for 25 years. And we brought him down a couple years ago to the Canadian National Exhibition. He makes these famous bannock dogs. Bannock is a traditional Indigenous fry bread that he learned from his grandmother, and he infuses it with a deep fried hot dog. And I can only tell you the lineups for Indigenous fried hot dogs at the CNE. Of course, people love free food, but the story and the message there was different. It was this collaboration between industry and community that is very special, and I think highly misunderstood by the mainstream media, and very important that some of these stories, get told. And Marcel himself started out as a breakfast cook, and over 25 years, became the head chef. And his team at Wendigo Catering, an Indigenous-owned catering and services business, is thriving because of the mining industry. I'll never forget a very important lesson that I learned from business leader JP Cladu. If you haven't had him on, I highly recommend. Moquatech is his business. He is an Indigenous person, and he taught me a very important lesson when we had him on the This Is Mining podcast with Amber Mack. You both were probably raised in a similar sense that maybe my mother told me. You treat people how you want to be treated. I thought, yeah, of course, that's how I was raised. And he flipped that on me when it comes to partnerships with Indigenous communities. You treat other people the way they want to be treated. And I will never forget that tiny nuance that has really changed my understanding and my connection, and my work with Indigenous people through mining communities. So I'm really grateful for that opportunity to have a better understanding of Indigenous peoples in Canada. And I really do believe that the mining industry has been a leader when it comes to reconciliation. The mining industry has been doing it long before it was, that word specifically. You look at the Musselwhite Agreement out of the Musselwhite Mine 25 plus years ago. Those impact benefit agreements were signed, not just in the last 5 to 10 years. So really, really essential that those stories are told, and they're told by those people.
Yeah, I think people can take good lessons from the mining industry when it comes to Indigenous relations. Ben.
Yeah, I wanted to kind of bring things back right to the beginning when you were talking about kind of your experience going into mining. And one of the things that I think is really interesting is and you can speak to this personally, but the like women in mining, right? As you said, it's not something that traditionally it's a male dominated field, and so. What is there a message that you bring out when it comes to trying to get more women into the mining sector in terms of because one of the things too is because you're going away, right? Like you're going 7 days on, or whatever that is. What's the message in terms of safety, maybe the opportunities that are there for women as well?
You know what, Ben? I'm always so fascinated when I get onto a mine site. I see a lot of women working there, and it's always really, really inspiring to see those women in leadership positions. The mine general manager of Detour Mine, Agnico Eagle, Bill, where you and I were just a couple weeks ago, she's a young mom. And I think that's really incredible that she's running a massive 1,000-person organization. Apparently, like the biggest, hotel north of in the north of 1,000 people living there. When you add everybody in who's there for breakfast, lunch, dinner, and working all the time, and producing at the levels that they produce, I'm really inspired by a lot of the women that are working there. Of course, there's always more work to do to ensure that we are safe and welcoming and want to be as diverse as possible, because that's where better creative thinking happens, right? You don't want to be the one talking to the same people who think like you. That's boring. There's so much we can learn from other people. So I'm really pleasantly surprised that when I go to these mine sites, I see a lot of young women and women in leadership positions. And that makes me really hopeful.
And one thing, as we always talk about on this podcast, obviously it's outdoors, because we're talking about mining specifically. What is your favorite, or if you can't pick a favorite, let's go top 3 favorite places in Northern Ontario? It doesn't have to be associated to a mine, but if you want to choose like a mine, you can. But just the top 3 kind of Ontario, or more specifically Northern Ontario places for you.
Just remember, she's a Muskoka person too.
Muskoka. We'll say Muskoka
Well, okay.
doesn't count in this
It doesn't
context.
count. I have to get one in.
Okay.
My grandparents had a beautiful property on Lake of Bays near Huntsville, Ontario for 60 plus years, and met at the famous Big Win Inn. So I'm absolutely a sucker for the lake and the outdoor culture. And I camped in Algonquin Park as a kid. Very, very proud to call Northern Ontario a home as a kid. And I'd say beyond that, I love getting up to the mine sites where I can. I mean, I'm actually heading up to Cote again in a couple weeks' time with a group of high school girls, which is really, really exciting. And the GM there, Brian Wilson, is such an advocate for bringing more people on site. So I'm excited to see through their eyes when they see those autonomous trucks go by and their minds are just blown. So I'd say that's a special spot for sure. That drive between Sudbury and Timmins is absolutely beautiful. So I'm lucky that I get to do that a couple times a year.
It is. Highway 144 is a beautiful drive, along with all the other secondary highways and the backroads in Northern Ontario, Ben.
I don't think
there's mines there, and that's why, again, and some of these backroads are because of mines. I often talk about forestry logging roads. We wouldn't be able to get to anywhere in the backroads unless there was forestry and mining. So that's just another sidebar to everything we talk about.
Well, and if I could just add one more thing, I mean, you may not think it's around you and you don't think about it every day, but get this, 25% of all of our domestic exports in Ontario. Like, that's just a staggering number when you think about it. A quarter of our entire exports in this province come from the mining industry, obviously a significant amount going to the United States. So this sector is ripe for so much potential. And I think that's my message to those listening, that if you're a young person, or if you are a parent of a young person, or you're thinking about a career switch yourself, there is ample opportunity in so many vocations in this industry. And you'll have a great paying job and have a lot of time off, opportunities to travel. So that's my sales pitch for those listening, thinking of a career change.
Well, you've done a fantastic job. And Ben, you know what? Mining matters on the back roads and beyond the back roads to all of us.
Yeah, and there definitely is a correlation. If you think of Alberta and oil, mining in Ontario is the thing. And I will say my brother-in-law just recently started working at, I don't remember the company's name off the top of my head. They're right over on Bond Street, and I can't think of what they do. But it's a good example of like, he's in his 30s, and he just started working in mining. Actually, he just moved up from Kitchener a couple of years ago. And
did he work in mining before, Ben?
No,
or is this new for him?
No, this is all new. It is a little bit juggling it's part-time, so he's able to choose when he wants to go, but he'll go for 10 days on and off. And then when he comes back, he is juggling 2 young kids. So there's a little bit of of that family balance, but it's nice because he can choose when he wants to go. It's kind of part-time, full-time kind of thing. And I can't remember the company's name, but a good example of when we talked about mining, they don't actually do any mining. I think he switches the parts out, or the drill bits or something like that.
So he's in the service supply sector then.
Yeah. And that's another thing for all the people looking to get into it is it doesn't matter what you're into, there's something there. It could be software. I know a lot of people have software stuff there. As you said, it's not just you mining stuff. There's a plethora of different jobs and careers. So no matter what you're interested in, and it's a very you can make a lot of money doing it.
Well, sometimes it's a supply chain, and sometimes I wonder, you can look at the price of gold, but sometimes I wonder, how do they make money from that? Because every time they hand it off, there's someone else doing it, and obviously there's wages and costs, et cetera, et cetera. So it always kind of amazes me how that happens. But again, it's the backbone of our economy. And thank you for speaking of managing children and dogs and everything else. You've managed to be on the Backroads Bill podcast and enlighten us. And you know what? You're a real gem, and you've enriched us.
Oh, well, thank you both for having me. And if folks are looking for more resources, this is Mine Life, the Ontario Mining Association's initiative with the Ontario government. Search us on all the social platforms and with our resources partners, Talent Egg. And hopefully we'll be coming to a career fair near you sometime in the fall. And listen for our podcast, season 5 of the award-winning This Is Mining, the podcast with Amber Mack, wherever you get your podcasts. And listen, I can't wait to get up to the north. Summertime in the north is the best. So I'm looking forward to our next trip together.
So a big thank you to Morgan. I mean, you can always tell when people are passionate about what they do. And when you're able to impact, especially the youth or people entering the workforce, it's powerful. And mining is honestly one of the best industries that you can get into now. Because it's not just traditional labor, like when you think, I'm swinging a pickaxe or something. It's, yes, there are... it's mostly machines now, but there is that more traditional labor sense to it. But it's also software. It's manufacturing, administrative work. There's so many different sectors of mining that you can get in. No matter what you're into, you can somehow get into the sector. It's amazing to work in. And the ability to move up in the companies are crazy. Like most of the big wigs that you'll meet, super down-to-earth people, and a lot of them started in the mines. They started kind of at the bottom floor and worked their way up. So really down-to-earth people, no pun intended, I guess. Amazing people. So if you know somebody who's kind of entering the workforce, think about mining. It's actually not a bad choice, especially when you're young and you can kind of do that cycle of going away for X number of days or weeks and coming back. It ends up being really, really nice. So if you enjoyed this episode, you can find more episodes of the Backroads Bill podcast on your favorite podcast player. The video version is on the North Bay Echo YouTube channel. And of course, you can always just head over to our website, northbayecho.ca, where you will find all of our shows, all 90, I want to say this is 93 or 94 of them. We're getting up to a very special episode 100, which I believe should be scheduled for early August. So keep your eye out for that. We have a really cool guest lined up. It's going to be really neat. Somebody very near and dear to Bill's heart. It's going to be a really cool episode. So make sure that you subscribe. Make sure that you like. Give us a little review, comment. Feedback always helps. It allows us to continue to grow as well. And we just like to hear it, whether it's good or bad. We want to know what you think about the stuff that we do. It's always nice. And while you're on northbayecho.ca, also check out the other shows that we've got. Both shows that are by Echo, that are produced by Echo, and also shows that are produced by other extremely creative people in the community here in North Bay. So that wraps things up here. Join us again next week for another Backroads Adventure.